If it's like a genie in a bottle type deal, if that's how dua works, what's the point of لِنَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, that you'll be tested? There's no test in this world if that's what faith is. Delay, ta'khir al-ijabah, delay in the answer to your dua. I make dua, I don't get the answer. At some point, what's the point of dua? And that's what the Prophet ﷺ said the real harm is. There's a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, it's a long hadith and I'll paraphrase it, where the Prophet ﷺ says, يَظَلَّ الْعَبْدُ يَدْعُو, a servant keeps on calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will answer him so long as he does not say, I made dua for such and such, and Allah did not answer me, and then he gives up his dua as a whole, meaning he stops supplicating as a whole, he stops believing in dua and the power of dua. So because of this one dua that I was making, and I wasn't getting the answer that I wanted, I forsake dua as a whole. وَالدُّعَاء هُوَ الْعِبَادَةِ. And the Prophet ﷺ said, supplication is worship, is the essence of worship. So I forsake dua, I forsake worship. What's the point of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anymore? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala withholds the answer, and you lose out on your worship because you start giving up on your worship. The problem is not in the dua, the problem is the expectation and the approach that you had to worship in the first place. And this speaks to what we spoke about, that you cannot be content in this world unless you know your purpose. If your purpose is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rather than to please self, then that will not be compromised by any of the circumstances of this world. If your purpose is to use Allah to please self and use everything around you, including religion, to please self, then you will always be miserable because the self will never be pleased enough. So eventually all of that will diminish and you'll give up on it, right? So when it comes to dua, you have to connect it to purpose. So Ibn Al-Jauzi rahimahullah ta'ala writes, he says, one day I was struck by a particular hardship and I made profuse dua appealing for comfort and a way out. The response from Allah was delayed, and so my soul was consumed by worry and anxiety. So I shouted at my soul. I said, Ma biki, what is it with you? Think of your condition. Are you an owner or are you one that is owned? Are you a planner or are you one that is planned for? Don't you know that this life is but a land of trials and tribulation? If you request your wants and are not patient with whatever outcomes don't match your preferences, then what's the point of test? If it's like a genie in a bottle type deal, if that's how dua works, what's the point of لِنَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, that you'll be tested? There's no test in this world if that's what faith is. Because then people would become Muslim just because, well, clearly it works. It's a tool of attaining dunya. So if the believer was answered in the way that the believer wanted to be answered, you made dua and it just right in front of you, number one, that means that Allah is not in control, because the way that Iradah Kawniyyah, the universal will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works, is that all forces work in a singular direction. Even the evil forces are coalesced with good forces to form a perfect equilibrium in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and in the way that the world proceeds. So even when an evil person is working evil, it's still not outside of the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, though the evil only belongs to the one who does evil. Are trials anything except the denial and opposition of one's desires? Realize what it means to be accountable, and only then will the hardships become erased, and only then will the calamities appear trivial. SubhanAllah, from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that even when you question the way that He's planning for you, He's still planning in your favor. That's mercy. That's supreme rahmah. That's supreme mercy. So are you the planner, or are you the one who's being planned for? Are you the owner or the one who's being owned? Meaning Allah doesn't work for you, you work for Him. Let's clarify your relationship with God. He doesn't work for you, you work for Him. Any invitation He gives to you to call upon Him is the invitation of a king to a citizen, a master to a slave, not come own me. You still remain in the capacity of a slave, and you still remain in the capacity of a beggar. You never get to assume the other role, even if your dua is awesome. He still remains in control when you ask Him, but He shows you that mercy as you ask Him.